everyone, class is in session. My name is Jack from Cultaholic.com and it's time to take a look at this week's Monday Night Raw Graded Canada edition. Let's go. That's right, this week Raw came from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and that can only mean one thing. Well, it meant two things actually. It meant smarky crowds, they cheer for who they want, it's Bizarro land, and also a beloved return from a wrestler from times gone by. So we'll look forward to that a little bit later on in today's review, but let's start off with the opening segment, and there was only one man who could kick off Raw in Toronto. That's right, Canadian hero, Roman Reigns. Yes. Reigns came out to the ring with his Universal Championship and said, you know what, me and Braun Strowman agreed to meet here right now, and he's a few minutes late, bless him. I also called him a meat shack a lot. Meat shack. Like Love Shack, but more meaty. Oh, that sounds distressing. Then Strowman came out and made actually a very, very good argument, to be fair to him. He said, you know what, Roman, you say that you're the big dog and you're all tough and stuff, but last week when I was about to cash in, you got your two friends in the Shield to bail you out of trouble. So I'm going to cash in on the one date that you can't have their help, Hell in a Cell. And Roman Reigns went, all right then, dog, that's fair enough. And they shook on it, and then out came Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler. Honestly, it felt like Drew and Dolph were kind of just shoehorned into this segment to set up for the main event later on, because Dolph's argument didn't really flow into the rest of their argument, if that makes sense. He came out and went, Seth Rollins stole the IC title from me. I'm still really cross about it. And then Drew was like, that's right, we need a new challenge, and it's you two. And I was like, that's tenuous at best, lads. Come on now. Then Baron Corbin hit the ring and went, hold on, lads. I make the matches around here because if you remember last week, Stephanie stripped Kurt Angle of the GM powers and gave them to Baron Corbin. So he went, I make the matches around here, and he made it official. Roman Reigns versus Braun Strowman at Hell in a Cell for the Universal Championship in, I guess, a Hell in a Cell match. Now, that's all fine and well, but then Corbin said something else which made me really chuckle. He went, I'm also going to make a main event tonight that Kurt Angle could only dream of. And I was like, oh my God, are we getting Kenny Omega versus Velveteen Dream or something like that? Has Corbin really pulled it out of the bag? No, he went, it's Strowman and Roman Reigns against Drew and Dolph, where the two feuding guys have to team together. It's a classic trope, Baron. We've seen it all before. And then, you know what, I had a lot of goodwill for this segment, and then it kind of got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse towards the end. And just to top things off, Corbin went, one more thing, as everyone else left the ring. He went, one more thing, I'm booking a match for myself right now. It's me versus Finn Bálor. Finn Bálor, who convincingly saw him off in about 2 minutes at SummerSlam. Overall, this opening segment for me gets a C, because I didn't like the Baron Corbin stuff. He was booked horribly here. He was making silly points and then made Finn Bálor versus himself once again. But at the same time, everyone's promo performances were pretty decent. Roman and Strowman were pretty good together as well. Dolph's always pretty good on the mic, and so is Drew McIntyre. So it all flowed quite nicely until Corbin kind of just brought everything juddering to a halt. But again, that's not the fault of Corbin himself. It's more the writing. So then we got Corbin versus Bálor. Not my idea of a fun Monday night, to be fair, anymore, after they've run this feud into the ground. But, you know, it was the same as every Corbin versus Bálor match we've seen, apart from the one where Bálor had paint on, so he beat him in 2 minutes. And then towards the end, Baron Corbin just got tired and smacked him with a chair, and then went, oh, I forgot to mention, it's actually a no DQ match. And then hit him with the end of days and pinned him for the victory. You know what? That's actually quite a novel bit of heel authority figure trickery, and I quite enjoyed that, actually. I'm going to give this a C-, unfortunately. Major minus points for the fact that we've seen this so many times before, but at the same time, I quite enjoyed the ending. So it's torn. Nothing's right, I'm torn. I'm all out of faith. This is how I feel. I'm bound and broken on. I've missed out a line or two there. Next up, we went backstage to find Titus Worldwide, or rather just Apollo and Dana. And then Titus came up and went, oh, it's really exciting, guys. I've got Dana Brooke a match. And Apollo Crews went, that might not be exciting actually, Titus, because Dana never wrestles, so it might not be that good of an idea. And I thought, wow, he's just verbalized what 1,000 smarks on the internet were thinking right that moment. What's he going to say next? He's going to say, oh, I reckon, Titus, instead what we should do is get rid of Dana and bring in someone like Momo Watanabe from Stardom, because she throws sick kicks and she's totally a workhorse. I really enjoy the idea of Apollo Crews uber smart. I think that would be very funny. So we got Dana versus Sasha, and Sasha won in like 2 minutes. But honestly, I didn't mind. I'm going to give it a B- just because, yes, the match was a bit nothing, but it all achieved something. The booking worked. to meet like an end, basically. So Sasha Banks picked up a win, which I don't remember her doing quite recently. Like, she missed obviously the SummerSlam card. She needs a big win under her belt, or a win on television, which she got. And also Titus Worldwide argued over Dana Brooke afterwards, with Apollo clearly saying like she shouldn't have been in there, she wasn't ready, and Titus like, oh, I should have. And it was a bit of an argument, so could be a bit of a fracture in the relationship of Titus's stable. Interesting. Next up, Seth Rollins versus Kevin Owens. This is one of Seth Rollins' IC Open Challenge title matches, that sort of thing. Kevin Owens came back and went, right, I accept your challenge, and they just had a sick match. I don't know what else to say. Seth Rollins retained with the stomp, and it was awesome. It was excellent. I'm going to give this an A-. It wasn't quite like the top level of some of the pay-per-view matches we saw recently, especially on NXT, but at the same time, it was still very, very good, especially for an episode of Monday Night Raw. And yeah, Rollins versus Owens, I mean, what more can you ask for? It's like Ring of Honor 2011 times, sort of, maybe, but bit later than that. My Smark knowledge is letting me down a little bit, but regardless, really good match. Then afterwards, we had some intrigue actually, as Braun Strowman went backstage and handed Corbin his briefcase for the cash-in at Hell in a Cell. Now, I think this could be a potentially misleading plot device. Maybe that briefcase is going to go missing in the meantime, let's just say. Also, we cut back to ringside after that. Owens was still sat in the ring, grabbed a microphone and went, you know what, I quit. And I'm hoping for some kind of rogue CM Punk style angle, but the way they've booked Owens in his WWE main roster career so far, I'm not too confident. Next up, the B Team versus the Revival in non-title action. This match was totally fine. The two teams, in a weird way, actually have quite a good chemistry. The Revival won this with the Shatter Machine after pretty much dominating large spells of the match. And then, I guess a title match. Oh, a title match has been set up for next week, actually. Oh, I've remembered, yes. So the two teams will face again next week, and this time the belts will be on the line. I'm going to give this a B-. I liked the match. I thought it was pretty entertaining. As I mentioned, the two teams have a certain strange chemistry about them. But at the same time, I don't understand why this wasn't a title match in the first place, basically, because the Revival got 2 singles wins over the 2 members of the B Team last week on Raw, and then they had to beat them again this week, and then they get their title match next week. So I'm not too keen on that booking, but the match itself, totally fine. Next up, Elias comes out, trashes Toronto, and then who should save the day? But Trish Stratus came back. Whoa! Now, this might not have been the biggest surprise just because we all know that she's been set up for a match against Alexa Bliss at Evolution, but at the same time, it was very exciting to see Trish Stratus back in WWE, and not just as a surprise entrant in the Women's Royal Rumble either. This was like on an episode of Monday Night Raw, coming out in her home country to call out Elias. I have some problems with this segment actually that I'm going to get into now, but the bit where Trish Stratus came out for me was one of the high points of Raw. So Trish hyped Evolution and her match with Bliss, and then Elias said, oh yeah, I've heard about that. Isn't that some kind of... I can't remember exactly what he said, but he insinuated that it was going to be like a bra and panties. He didn't say the Gravy Bowl match, to be fair. He said like it's going to be some kind of... I've been looking forward to the big pervert. The big old perv. Trish was obviously annoyed, and then Elias said, oh no, I know you're not really annoyed. You, like every woman in here, wants to walk with Elias, but I don't date 60-year-olds or women in their 60s. You can't be saying that, Elias. I mean, rightly so. Trish Stratus then hit him in the balls, and Elias scuttled off, and then we got another segment tacked on the end of this one. It was weird. So then Natalya and Ronda just kind of showed up and hung out with Trish, and then Alexa and Alicia Fox came out on the ramp and cut a promo, basically. Alexa Bliss said, oh, Trish, you're looking great, but I'm going to beat you at Evolution, ha ha ha. And also, right now, Alicia Fox is going to beat up Natalya. So there we go. And she wanted a rematch as well for Hell in a Cell against Ronda Rousey. So this was... What's Elias got to do with this? I'm going to give this a C- because as exciting as... And the only reason that it gets a C- was because of the surprise return of Trish Stratus. That's the only reason it gets this higher grade. But I don't understand what Elias was needed for here. Couldn't they have had Alexa Bliss come out and rip on Toronto, and then Trish Stratus comes out and smack talks her right there and then they do this little promo bit at the end? Why was Elias in any way, shape or form involved in this segment? He had nothing to do with it. He has nothing to do with the feud. He has nothing to do with anyone in the women's division, I think. What? When did you write this? Like, was it like the last minute before the show? Did Trish just rock up and they went, well, we've got to get her in somewhere? So all of that eventually led to Natalya versus Alicia Fox, and Natalya got the win in about 2 minutes. It was like a women's match from like 2010 or so, where they're trying to give the impression they're taking the women's division seriously, but there's like 6 women crammed around the ring, and the story's only about 2 of them, and then they've got to cram like 10 minutes worth of stuff into a 2-minute match. It was very much that sort of thing. So I'm gonna grade it a question mark, because I don't know what to say about it. I don't know what to grade it. It was It was the payoff of a confusing promo segment. Then Bobby Lashley squashed the Ascension in a 2-on-1 handicap match, and again, I don't know what to grade this because it was just a babyface squashing some heels, and I haven't even seen the Ascension in so long, I was quite confused to even see them on my screen. So again, I'm just going to give it a question mark, or maybe a big Lashley head if Pachiti's got time. Don't worry if you don't, Pachiti. But that's right, Adam's editing this one, everyone. Say hi to Adam. Nah. Hello. Next up, just to check my notes to make sure I've got this right. So we had Natalya versus Alicia Fox, squash match, babyface wins. Lashley versus Ascension, squash match, babyface wins. Ambrose versus Jinder, squash match, Ambrose, babyface win. 3 in a row. I am going to grade this one, like, as just a cumulative effort, I think, of all 3 matches. D-, because that's 3 short, pointless matches in a row. I don't understand what's going on. And finally, we get the main event of the evening, Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler against Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman. Roman and Strowman. The big dogs, yeah. Now, when I looked at the people in this match, I was like, this is going to be good. This is going to be a good Raw main event. It was such a letdown, guys. Basically, this was one of those instances where the story they're trying to shoehorn in, which is Roman and Strowman can't trust each other, they don't want to work together, that kind of gets in the way of a good and entertaining match. So we just had Roman Reigns isolated by the heels for the vast majority of the match, and it dragged and dragged and dragged. And then eventually, when he made it over to Strowman and made the tag, Strowman had no interest in taking part in the match, allowed the heels to keep beating Roman Reigns down, and then the referee DQ'd them. So the heels look stupid for continuing to beat down Roman Reigns and not winning the match. Strowman looks like a dick, I guess, but we'll get to why in a second. And Roman Reigns looks like a chump. So what was the point? Thankfully, the post-match stuff was actually a bit more real feeling. It felt like an actual fight in the middle of a wrestling show, or the end of a wrestling show, where the Shield came out, Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, and actually got beaten down by the heels who were prepared for them, chiefly because Braun Strowman turned heel and joined forces with Drew and Dolph. Now, you can say what you want about whether this is a good idea or not. Personally, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you're taking one of your hottest baby faces in Braun Strowman, a man you've given the Money in the Bank contract and had squashed Kevin Owens. Poor Kevin Owens, how must he feel right now? And then turned him heel to try and get Roman Reigns over. And Roman's already aligned with 2 of the most over baby faces in WWE. So it feels, again, like WWE are trying to put all their eggs into one basket, and the Roman Reigns getting cheered basket, that should be made clear. But yeah, I don't know really what to think of it. The grade I'm going to give this whole thing is probably a C-. The match was long and dragged and frustrating, and then I don't really agree with the decision to turn Strowman heel, but they executed it pretty well. The ending segment did close Raw on quite an exciting note. So yeah, I think a C- is probably fair, but I'm not too big a fan of it. Overall, I'm going to give this Raw, and this might sound a little bit harsh, but I'm probably, I'm going to give it a D+, because a lot of the individual segments that I've given throughout have all been like slightly above a D+ on average, probably. But at the same time, if it wasn't for Owens versus Rollins, this Raw would have been one of the worst I've seen in a long time. I really did not enjoy this. Like, it was proper bad. They screwed up a lot of stuff, and it just felt all rewritten at the last second. So Strowman's turning heel out of nowhere. Trish Stratus is kicking off at Elias for some reason. And a third thing also. Oh, there were 3 weird squash matches in a row that lasted about a minute each, and each ended with the babyface winning. That's my third point, yeah. D+, and I don't feel bad about it. Raw, buck your ideas up, lads. SmackDown's doing alright, apart from the Becky Lynch thing. Oh, let's get to the outro. So that was Raw Graded from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. You can follow me on Twitter if you want to Jack the Jobber. You can follow all of us at Cultaholic, and check out our Patreon if you want to. Patreon.com/Cultaholic. And never forget, of course, to join us.